Welcome. This is Jack, and you are listening to The Random English. Today's topic is something very simple to hear, but very difficult to actually do. We're talking about the art of letting go.
And I think before we go deeper, we should make one thing clear. Letting go doesn't mean you didn't care. It doesn't mean something was not important. Sometimes it actually means the opposite. It means it mattered so much that holding on to it started affecting you.
That's true, because most of us don't hold on to things for no reason. There's always something behind it, a memory, a feeling, a version of life that we thought would stay the same.
And the strange part is, even when things clearly change, we still try to hold them in the same place. Not because we don't see the change, but because we don't want to accept it.
I remember something like that. Not too dramatic, but it stayed with me for a long time. There was a friend, someone I used to talk to almost every day. It wasn't forced, it just happened naturally. Conversations were easy, and it felt like that connection would always stay. But slowly, things started changing. Replies became shorter, sometimes delayed, sometimes completely missing. And I could see it. It wasn't hidden. But instead of accepting it, I kept telling myself, maybe they're busy. Maybe it's just a phase.
That maybe feeling, it keeps things alive longer than they should.
Exactly. I wasn't holding on to the person anymore. I was holding on to the version of them that existed before. And that's where it gets confusing. Because you're not dealing with reality anymore. You're dealing with memory.
And memory is always softer than reality. It removes the uncomfortable parts and keeps only what feels good.
Right. And because of that, letting go feels like losing something beautiful, even if that thing doesn't exist in the same way anymore.
I think that's where most people get stuck. They don't realize that they are not holding on to the present. They are holding on to something that already changed. And that makes it harder because you can't clearly see what you're actually losing.
And you don't even question it. You just keep adjusting yourself. You reply faster. You try to keep the conversation going. You make small efforts, hoping things will go back to how they were.
But deep inside, you can feel that something is off. Not in a loud way, not something you can easily explain, but it's there. A small discomfort, a quiet signal that things are not the same.
And still, you ignore it. Because accepting it would mean accepting the end of something you're not ready to lose.
That's the thing about letting go. It doesn't start with strength. It starts with awareness, with noticing that you are holding on to something that is slowly slipping away.
And sometimes, the hardest part is not the letting go itself. It's the moment when you realize that you might have to.
Because until that moment, there's always hope. And hope can be beautiful. But sometimes, it also keeps you stuck in a place where nothing is really moving.
And you don't even realize how much energy it takes to hold on to something that is already changing.
That's why this topic is not about being strong, or being cold, or suddenly cutting things off. It's about understanding what you are holding on to and why.
Because once you understand that, everything starts to look a little clearer. Not easier, but clearer.
And maybe that's where letting go actually begins. Not with action, but with seeing things as they really are.
When you start seeing things clearly, that's when it actually becomes uncomfortable. Because now you can't pretend anymore. You can't say, it's just in my head, or it will fix itself. You start noticing patterns, small changes, things you ignored before.
And once you notice those patterns, they don't go away easily. They stay with you. They follow you in your thoughts, even when you're trying to focus on something else.
I went through something like that, and it wasn't sudden. It built slowly. There was a time when I was really close to someone, not just a normal connection. It felt important. We used to talk every day, share random things, even small updates, like what we ate or what happened during the day. It felt natural, not forced. But then one day, something small happened. I remember sending a long message, not emotional, just normal, talking about my day, asking about theirs. And the reply I got was just one word. Okay. At first, I didn't think much of it. I thought maybe they were busy. But then it started happening again. Not every time, but enough for me to notice.
And those small changes, they say a lot without saying anything directly.
Exactly. After a few days, I started checking my phone more often. Not because I had something important to do, but because I was waiting for that normal conversation to come back. I remember one night very clearly. It was around 11:30. I had already sent a message earlier, and there was no reply. I kept telling myself, don't check your phone again, just sleep. But I still checked it, again and again. And every time I saw no notification, it felt a little heavier.
That waiting feeling, it drains you without you realizing it.
Yes, and the worst part was, when the reply finally came, it was normal. Nothing was wrong in the words, but something still felt different. Like the effort was missing, like the connection was not the same anymore. And I kept thinking, maybe it's just a phase. Maybe I'm overthinking. So instead of stepping back, I tried harder. I started texting more, asking more, trying to bring back that same energy.
And did it work?
No, it actually made it worse, because now it became one-sided. I was putting in more effort and expecting the same in return. And when that didn't happen, it started affecting my mood. There were days when I woke up and the first thing I checked was my phone. And if there was no message, it already changed how my day felt.
That's when it starts becoming more than just a connection. It starts affecting your peace.
Exactly. And I didn't like that version of myself. I didn't like how something so simple, a reply, a message, started controlling my mood. But even after realizing that, I didn't let go.
Because you were still hoping that it would go back to how it was.
Yes, I was holding on to the past, even when the present was clearly different.
I went through something similar, but in a different way. It wasn't about messages. It was about a moment that stayed with me. I remember being with someone, sitting right in front of them, having a conversation. Everything looked normal from the outside. But in the middle of that conversation, they said something very casually. They said, "You think too much. It's not that deep."
That sounds simple, but I can feel there's more behind it.
Yes, because it wasn't about the words. It was about the way it was said. At that moment, I didn't react. I just smiled and continued the conversation. But inside, something didn't sit right. Because I wasn't overthinking. I was just trying to express something that mattered to me. And the way they dismissed it made me feel like my thoughts didn't matter.
And you didn't say anything at that time?
No, I told myself it's not a big deal. But when I went home, that one line kept repeating in my head. I remember sitting on my bed that night, not doing anything, just thinking about that moment again and again. I kept asking myself, was I really overthinking? Or did they just not understand me? And that one small moment changed how I felt around them.
It's strange how one sentence can shift everything.
Yes. After that, I became more careful. I started thinking before speaking, filtering my thoughts, making sure I don't sound too much. And slowly, without realizing, I stopped being fully myself around them.
And that's where it starts hurting. Not loudly, but slowly.
Exactly. Because you're not losing the person suddenly. You're losing your natural self, little by little.
And still, you stay. You adjust. You try to make it work.
Because letting go at that point feels too big. It feels like you're making something serious out of something small.
But deep down, you know it's not small.
Yes, it's never just about that one moment. It's about what that moment represents, what it shows you, what it makes you feel.
And that's the confusing part. Everything looks normal on the surface, but inside, something is slowly breaking.
And when things break slowly, you don't react immediately. You just carry it quietly until it becomes too heavy to ignore.
And when it becomes too heavy, that's when things start changing inside you. Not outside. Everything still looks normal. You still talk, you still meet, you still respond. But inside, something feels different.
You stop feeling relaxed around them. Even small interactions start needing effort. You think before speaking. You measure your words. You hold back things you would normally say without thinking.
And that's not how a real connection is supposed to feel. It's supposed to feel easy, not something you have to manage all the time.
There was a point where I realized this very clearly. And it didn't come from a big fight or anything dramatic. It came from a very normal day. I remember I was sitting with that same person again. We were having a conversation, nothing serious. But this time, I noticed myself more than the conversation. I noticed that I was choosing my words carefully. I was avoiding certain topics, things I used to talk about openly before. And it felt strange, because I wasn't doing it consciously. It just happened.
Like your mind was protecting you without telling you.
Exactly. And in that moment, I realized something that I didn't want to accept before. I realized that I was no longer comfortable being myself around them. That realization was very quiet, but very strong. Because it didn't come from overthinking. It came from observing myself.
And once you see that, you can't unsee it.
Yes. After that, every interaction started feeling a little forced. Not from their side completely, but from mine too. Because now I was aware, and awareness changes everything.
I had a similar moment, but mine came a little differently. It was late at night again. I was scrolling through old chats, reading conversations from weeks ago when things were normal. And I noticed something. The way we used to talk, the way we used to reply, it had a completely different energy. Back then, there was no waiting, no confusion, no overthinking. It just flowed. And then I looked at the recent messages, and it felt like I was reading something between two different people.
That comparison, it makes everything very clear.
Yes, and for the first time, I didn't try to justify it. I didn't say, maybe it will go back. I just looked at it as it was. And that's when it hit me. I was holding on to something that already changed. Not slightly, but completely.
That's a very difficult moment, because now you don't have any excuse left.
Exactly. And I remember putting my phone down, just sitting there for a few minutes, not doing anything. It wasn't sadness in a dramatic way. It was more like a quiet acceptance starting to build.
Like something inside you is slowly saying, this is not the same anymore.
Yes. And the strange part is, nothing officially ended. No one said, it's over. No big conversation happened. But still, it felt like something had already ended.
Sometimes endings don't come with clear words. They come with changed behavior, changed energy, changed presence.
And we keep waiting for a clear ending because it feels easier. But when it doesn't come, we stay stuck in between.
That in between is the most confusing place. You're not fully connected, but you're not fully disconnected either.
And that's where letting go becomes necessary, but also very difficult.
Because now it's not about understanding anymore. You already understand. It's about accepting what you understand and doing something about it.
And that's the part people avoid the most.
Yes, because acceptance means change, and change means stepping into something unknown.
But at the same time, staying in that same place starts feeling heavier every day.
And slowly, you reach a point where you have to choose. Not between them and you, but between your peace and your attachment.
And that choice doesn't feel strong or powerful in the moment.
It feels quiet, uncomfortable, almost like you're about to lose something.
But deep down, you also know you're about to find something too.
And maybe that's where the real process of letting go actually begins.
And when that process really begins, it doesn't look strong from the outside. There's no big announcement, no dramatic decision. It's just small, quiet changes that slowly start happening.
You don't suddenly stop caring. You don't suddenly forget everything. It's much slower than that. Some days feel clear, and some days pull you back again.
I remember the first thing I did. It wasn't anything big. I just stopped checking my phone every few minutes. That habit, it was controlling me more than I realized. At first, it felt strange. My hand would still reach for the phone without thinking. But then I started putting it away, keeping it a little far from me. It sounds small, but it made a difference.
Those small actions, they slowly break the pattern. Because letting go is not just emotional, it's also behavioral.
Exactly. And then one day, I did something I was avoiding for a long time. I opened our chat, and I didn't scroll up. I didn't read old messages. I just looked at the present, and I closed it. That moment felt different. It felt like I was finally choosing reality instead of memory.
That's a big step, even if it looks small. For me, it was a little different. I didn't have chats to go back to, but I had thoughts, repeated thoughts that kept coming again and again. So I started noticing them instead of fighting them. Whenever that one line came back to my mind, I didn't argue with it anymore. I didn't try to prove myself right or wrong. I just let it be there without reacting.
That sounds simple, but it's actually very difficult.
It is, because we're used to reacting, explaining, defending ourselves. But when you stop doing that, something changes. The thought loses its power slowly. It doesn't disappear immediately, but it becomes lighter.
And I think that's the real meaning of letting go. Not forcing something to end, but allowing it to lose its hold on you.
Yes, because you're not removing the memory. You're removing the attachment to that memory.
And after some time, you start noticing small differences. You wake up, and that feeling is not the first thing on your mind anymore. You go through your day, and you don't check your phone with the same urgency. It's not that everything is perfect, but it's calmer.
There's more space in your mind, more silence, but in a peaceful way, not an empty way.
And you slowly start coming back to yourself. The version of you that existed before all this. Or maybe even a better version. A more aware version.
Because now you understand something you didn't understand before. That not everything is meant to stay. And that's okay.
And letting go doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't make it meaningless.
It just means you're not carrying it everywhere anymore.
And that's a very different feeling. It's lighter. It's clearer.
So if you're listening to this and you're holding on to something right now, something that feels heavy but hard to release,
just know you don't have to rush it. You don't have to force it.
start by noticing it. Start by understanding it. That's where everything begins.
And slowly, in your own way, at your own pace,
You'll reach a point where holding on feels harder than letting go.
and when that moment comes, you'll understand what letting go really means.
Not losing something.
But finally choosing yourself. If this felt close to your life, if you saw yourself in any part of this, you're not alone.
You can share your thoughts, your experiences. We would really like to hear them.
And we'll see you in the next one.